This video details the service procedure to retract the piston and rebuild the sleeves on rear brake calipers, as detailed in bulletin number 335005R. It includes a review of the various service tools developed to help make this job easier for you. The procedure outlined in this video, as well as in bulletin number 335005R, replaces the procedure detailed in bulletin number 335005, which was issued in March of 1993. This rear brake caliper servicing applies to 1988 through 1994 Chevrolet Lumina, 1988 through 1993 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, 1988 through 1993 Pontiac Grand Prix, and 1988 through 1993 Buick Regal models. To complete this procedure, you will need a rear caliper boot kit, part number 3494600. One kit will rebuild the sleeves on both rear calipers and includes 8 caliper sleeve boots, a plastic sleeve installation cone to aid installation of the sleeves through the boots on the caliper, and lubricant. Special tools used for this procedure include a Kentmore sleeve rebuild kit number J39495. This kit consists of a bushing remover, flex hone, and wire brush. A Kentmore piston retractor tool number J39730. An accumulator piston compressor number J22269-01. A Kentmore 19mm torque stick number J39544-15. And the new Kentmore sanding toolkit number J41013 that was supplied with the brake service bulletin. This new kit contains a drill adapter and a supply of 80 grit sanding discs. This sanding tool will help you clean the rotor and hub mounting surfaces as well as the surfaces on the caliper. All of the tools shown here for this procedure are available from Kentmore and may be ordered by calling 1-800-345-2233. Now you're ready to start the procedure. Raise the vehicle on a hoist and install the hoist safety pins. Then, remove the rear wheels. On 1988 through 1990 models, remove the bolt that holds the brake line bracket to the strut. On 1991 and later models, this step is not required because the brake line is not attached. Note that for this procedure, you don't need to remove the brake line or the parking brake cable and lever assembly from the caliper. To remove the caliper from the rotor, remove the 2 caliper bolts from the rear of the caliper. Then, with a screwdriver positioned on the top edge of the rotor, pry the caliper off the rotor, using care not to score the rotor. Be careful when supporting the caliper not to damage the brake hose. If the brake rotor needs servicing, remove the rotor from the hub at this time. Continuing with the caliper service, remove the disc brake pads from the caliper. Remove the outer pad first, then the inner pad. Be careful not to damage the pad retainer clip because it is reusable. To prevent any damage to the clip, carefully pry the bottom of the pad out of the retainer clip and then gently tap the pad down and off of the caliper bridge. Then, carefully remove the retainer clip from the piston. Once the clip is removed, the next step is to remove the sleeves. To remove the sleeves, attach the Kentmore bushing remover tool J39495-1 to an air hammer and drive the sleeves straight out. You don't have to remove the boots first. By applying pressure with an air hammer and bushing remover tool, the boots are driven out along with the sleeves. Don't drop the sleeve when it's pushed out of the caliper because it could be damaged. Place both the sleeves in a rag soaked in brake parts cleaner, part number 123-45-754 or equivalent, until you are ready to reassemble the caliper. With the sleeves off the caliper, remove any remaining boot material from the caliper bores and grooves. The caliper can now be reconditioned. To retract the caliper pistons, first attach the Kentmore piston retractor tool number J39730 to the Kentmore accumulator piston compressor, tool number J22269-01. Then position the retractor compressor assembly on the caliper and caliper piston. Retract the piston on right side calipers by turning the compressor C-clamp handle in a clockwise direction. Continue tightening the handle and rotating the retractor tool with a 5/8 inch wrench until the piston is completely retracted. Note that on left side calipers, the retractor tool must be turned counterclockwise to retract the piston. After the piston has been retracted, use the open-end wrench to position the grooves in the piston vertically to accept the inner pad retainer clip. For the right side caliper, rotate the retractor tool in a clockwise direction. And for the left, rotate the tool in a counterclockwise direction. Once the piston is aligned, remove the piston retractor assembly from the caliper. Using an 80 grit sandpaper disc and a file, clean the caliper bridge and inner pad guide grooves of any corrosion. Make sure the bridge and guide grooves are clean, as a high-temp grease will be applied to this surface during reassembly. Next, use the Kentmore wire brush, tool number J39495-3, mounted on an electric or air drill to clean the boot grooves. There should be a lot of resistance when trying to insert the wire brush into the bore. If the brush enters the bore with little or no resistance, it is worn out and should be replaced. A worn-out brush makes it harder to completely clean the grooves. If there's any dirt or scale remaining after using the wire brush, use a seal pick to remove it from the edges of the grooves. It's very important to make sure the grooves are clean of any dirt or scale to ensure proper seating of the new boots. To recondition the bore, mount the Kentmore Flex Hone tool, number J39495-2, on an electric or air drill. Use brake fluid as a honing lubricant to extend the life of the hone. Then, hone out the bore with a straight in and out motion. Never angle the honing motion, as the hone will be damaged. Remember to only use brake fluid when honing. Using a petroleum-based parts cleaner as a lubricant will damage any rubber parts on the caliper. After the honing has been completed, thoroughly flush out the bore and boot grooves with brake parts cleaner to remove any grit that may remain. It's important to make sure the rear grooves are also clean. They are not as accessible as the front. Then, using a clean, dry, lint-free shop rag, thoroughly wipe the bore and grooves to make sure that no grit remains. When you're ready to reassemble the caliper, remove the sleeves from the rag soaked in brake parts cleaner and use that rag to wipe the sleeves clean of any old grease. Never use abrasive materials to clean the sleeves. Remember, the sleeves are hard chromed and clean up easily. It is not necessary to replace them. Once the sleeves have been cleaned, you may notice some minor pitting and/or wear marks on the sleeves. These are common and do not require replacement of the sleeve. The pits and wear marks will fill up with grease when reinstalled. The caliper can now be reassembled. First, thoroughly coat the inside of the caliper bores and boot grooves with the grease included in the rebuilding kit. Make sure the grooves are full of grease. Then coat the inside and outside beads of the new sleeve boots. Once thoroughly coated, install the boots into the outside groove in the caliper bore. Make sure the boot is seated in the groove by pressing the bead into the groove and then rotating the boot. Do not install the new boots in the inside bore grooves yet, as the sleeves need to be installed first. Thoroughly coat the sleeves with the new sleeve grease. There should be enough grease included in the rebuild kit to lubricate the boots and sleeves on both rear calipers, and all the grease should be used. If more grease is needed, use GM part number 180-109-09 or equivalent silicone grease. To install the sleeves, place the plastic installation cone on one end of the sleeve and insert it into the bore. Push the end of the sleeve completely through the outside boot and remove the installation cone. Then, place the cone on the end of the sleeve just installed. Push the sleeve and cone into the bore far enough to install a boot in the inside groove of the bore. Make sure the boot is seated in the groove during installation by pressing the bead into the groove and then rotating the boot. Push the sleeve through the inside boot just installed and cycle the sleeve back and forth several times. This ensures that no part of the boots are protruding from the grooves in the caliper bore and that the boot beads are secure in the sleeve grooves. With both sleeves installed, apply a thin coating of high-temp grease to the caliper bridge and brake pad guides. Then install the inner brake pad retainer clip on the caliper piston. Install the inner brake pad on the inner pad retainer clip and the outer brake pad on the caliper. If the rotor was removed for servicing, thoroughly clean and sand the bearing hub surface to prevent brake rotor runout. You should also sand the outer and inner mounting surfaces of the rotor. To clean these surfaces, mount the Kentmore sanding kit adapter tool number J41013 to an electric or air drill. Then, with an 80 grit sanding disc, thoroughly sand the bearing hub surface that contacts the brake rotor and the inside surface of the rotor that comes in contact with the hub, as well as the outside surface. After all surfaces have been sanded and are clean of any corrosion, install the rotor on the bearing hub in the same position as it was removed. Before installing the caliper, push both sleeves all the way back from the inner pad and insert the caliper bolts into the sleeves. Then, place the caliper on the rotor using care not to damage the boots on the knuckle or rotor. With a wrench, thoroughly tighten the caliper bolts. On 1988 through 1990 models, reinstall the brake line bracket and bolt on the strut behind the rotor backing plate. And although the parking brake cable and assembly was never removed, check the parking brake cable for proper operation. To complete the procedure, reinstall the wheels in the same position on the hub as when they were removed. Then install the lug nuts on the wheel studs and tighten them finger tight. Mount the Kentmore torque stick, tool number J39544-15, to an impact wrench and, using the star pattern, tighten all 5 lug nuts to about 1/2 of the specified torque. Then again, using the star pattern, tighten the lug nuts to the specified torque. Keep in mind a torque wrench or the torque stick must be used to ensure that the lug nuts are tightened to the specified torque and not over-tightened. The rear caliper sleeve servicing procedure is now complete. Remember, this video and bulletin number 335005R replaces the procedure detailed in bulletin number 335005. Servicing today's customers' vehicles requires the knowledge, information, and tools to fix it right the first time. And General Motors is dedicated to providing you the necessary information needed to stay on top of the ever-changing automotive service environment. This videotape and the service bulletin it supports is only one of the many ways GM is striving to meet your needs. Properly serviced vehicles means satisfied customers, and satisfied customers translates into increased business. As a service professional, you must strive to do your best with every vehicle that comes into your service department. You not only owe it to yourself, you owe it to your customers.